You think it's scary walking past a shark tank or spotting a spider on your bedroom wall? Just be thankful you didn't have to worry about a beaver the size of a black bear lurking outside your front door. The dangerous animals of today look vicious, sure. But the extinct monsters we're about to visit would make great whites and crocodiles look like slightly aggressive pool toys. Tonight, you're stepping into a quieter world that used to be 1,000 times deadlier. This is 101 Weird Facts About Extinct Animals, where the creatures are gone, the facts are real, and the nightmares are safely locked in the fossil record. These weren't just strange animals, they were lethally strange, deadly in ways your poor ancestors could barely understand. Right now, you're safe. There's glass between you and the tiger at the zoo. There's a narrator between you and the crocodile in the documentary. There's a cozy bed, a dark room, and maybe a fan humming in the background. Out there in the deep past? Stepping outside your cave could mean meeting a giant ground sloth with claws like meat hooks, or a bird that hunted like a sprinting guillotine. Picture this as you drift, snow falling in slow motion, the sky glowing with auroras, and a herd of woolly mammoths moving silently through the dark. Their breath fogs the air. Their fur ripples in the wind. Somewhere nearby, a short-faced bear, almost horse-fast and towering over any living bear, lifts his head. He smells prey. He was savage. You think it's scary swimming in the ocean today? Luckily for us, the largest shark you'll meet is a great white, not a megalodon with a bite strong enough to turn a car into scrap metal. And as if it couldn't get any worse than this, the seas also held mosasaurs, reptilian torpedoes with jaws wide enough to swallow a dolphin in 2 bites. You wouldn't want to come across that during your morning swim. On land, car-sized armadillo cousins called glyptodon shuffled around in armored domes so tough early humans may have used the empty shells as portable shelters. Island rats grew as big as dogs, while elephants shrank down to pony size, like someone hit randomize on evolution and walked away. Here's the twist for your brain. We're going to move slowly, speak softly, and paint these scenes like a calm, cinematic dream. The pacing stays gentle so your body can relax, but the facts are so bizarre, so extreme, that a tiny part of your mind stays hooked, just enough to keep you from drifting into boring thoughts. Across this sleepy tour, we'll whisper 101 weird facts about extinct animals that were faster, larger, and more vicious than anything alive now. And by the end, you'll know which extinct creature was so overpowered that no predator today could ever compete. Who was the ultimate lethal animal? Stay lying down, and we'll get there. So if today's lions and great whites already make you a little nervous, just remember, they're the toned-down, family-friendly version of what used to roam this planet. You think it's scary to walk through a forest now? Try the same walk when the squirrels were dog-sized rodents and the cows were horned tanks with built-in clubs. Across Earth's history, there have been whole ages where the volume knob on nature was turned way past 11. Warmer climates, thicker atmospheres, and in some eras, way more. Oxygen meant bodies could grow larger, stranger, and more heavily armed than anything alive today. Wings stretched longer, teeth grew deeper, armor got thicker. Even the herbivores looked like they'd been designed by a kid who just discovered spikes. And we're not staying in just one time period. We're going to drift from dinosaur-ruled swamps to Ice Age tundras to lonely islands where evolution went completely off the rails. One moment you're beside a 50-foot sea lizard. The next you're staring up at a terror bird that hunts like a cheetah with a hatchet for a face. Every creature we meet will quietly compare to something you know now, so your sleepy brain can picture the scale. Great white shark? House cat? Angry goose? You'll get your reference points. Danger in this world doesn't only mean sharp teeth. Sometimes it's pure mass, like a car-sized glyptodon whose shell was tough enough that your poor ancestors might have used the empty ones as portable bunkers. Sometimes it's stampede power, like woolly mammoths moving as silently as snowdrifts until the ground starts to shake. Sometimes it's poison, infection, or a bite that doesn't kill you fast. It just makes sure something else finishes the job. Then there's the psychological terror. Imagine standing in waist-deep water at dusk when a shadow like Dinosuchus slides underneath you and you never see more than a ripple. Or dozing in a cave while a saber-toothed cat pads in without a sound. Luckily for us, those rooms are long empty. You only have your imagination to worry about. And don't get too comfortable thinking, carnivores are the problem. Oh boy. Some of the most dangerous animals in this list are technically peaceful plant eaters, wrapped in bone armor and swinging tail maces that could turn a T-Rex kneecap into gravel. Others are tiny specialists, little reptiles with toxic saliva, birds that kill with one perfectly placed kick, rodents whose front teeth work like hydraulic bolt cutters. We're not doing a strict countdown, but we are slowly turning the dial. As we move forward, each animal gets a bit stranger, a bit deadlier, a bit more. You wouldn't want to come across this in a dark swamp. Somewhere out there in deep time, one creature really was the apex of overkill design. By the time you're almost asleep, we'll be right beside him. And he was savage. Next, we'll start gently, with beasts that look almost familiar, until you hear what they could actually do. So if T-Rex, with that bone-crushing bite, and saber-toothed cats, with those nightmare canines, weren't the absolute worst things to ever stalk this planet, what was? You think it's scary to bump into a grizzly on a hike or see a great white on a nature dock, but compared to the real final boss of Earth's history, those guys are warm-up acts. Somewhere in deep time, there was an animal so efficient at turning living things into leftovers that no modern predator even comes close. Not great whites with their 40,000 teeth scares, not polar bears with their ice-stalking routine. This thing was built like nature opened a Create a Monster menu and ticked every box: speed, power, stealth, maybe even teamwork. As if it couldn't get any worse than this, it probably didn't just chase you. It controlled how and when you died. To get there, we're going to walk past creatures that already feel unfair. Imagine a car-sized armadillo, Glyptodon, rolling around with a domed shell so tough your poor ancestors may have used the empty ones as shelters. It wasn't the most vicious hunter, but picture trying to crack that armor while something even worse is watching from the shadows. You wouldn't want to come across that combo in any time period. Then there were the giant rodents. Joseph Artigacia, a prehistoric rodent over a ton in weight, with incisors like mini elephant tusks. He could dig, defend, and probably joust with those things. Just be thankful you didn't have to explain to your friends that you got taken out by a homicidal guinea pig the size of a car. On lonely islands, evolution got weird. Elephants shrank down to pony size, while rats bulked up to small dog proportions. Terror birds like Titanus walleri sprinted around at over 2 meters tall, swinging that hooked beak like a battle axe. Every time you meet one of these extinct nightmares, it feels like, okay, that's it. That's the top predator. Oh boy, not even close, because waiting beyond them are the heavy hitters you already know. Short-faced bears that could run like horses, raptors that slashed in coordinated attacks, marine reptiles that turned oceans into all-you-can-eat buffets. Each one will sound like the most dangerous animal to ever live, until the next one walks in and casually outdoes it. Somewhere beyond even those monsters, Our unnamed apex waits. No title, no spoiler yet, just a shape in the dark at the far end of the timeline. So settle in. Let your shoulders drop. Slow your breathing. With every extinct killer we pass, imagine the world getting a little darker, a little quieter, as we walk step by step toward that final, nameless shadow waiting at the end of the list. Before we march into the top 10, let's stretch with a little nightmare warm-up. Think of this as the Honorable Monsters round. These are the ones so weird, so dangerous, we can't give them full segments. But we also can't, in good conscience, leave them out of your dreams tonight. Giant beaver. You think it's scary to see a normal beaver slap its tail in a dark pond? Try Castoroides, the Ice Age beaver that grew around 2.5 meters long, roughly the size of a black bear. We're talking up to 100 kilos of rodent, waddling around wetlands like a furry kayak. And the punchline? It probably couldn't even build proper dams. Its teeth were shaped more for cutting plants than carpentry, so this thing was basically a mega beaver that failed shop class. Still, you wouldn't want to come across a bear-sized rodent on a midnight walk near the water, even if he was just an herbivore. Terror bird. Down in ancient South and North America, long after the big dinosaurs bowed out, giant flightless birds picked up the predator job. Titanus and his cousins stood up to 2.5 meters tall, taller than most humans, with a massive hooked beak like a biological battle axe. Some estimates put them around 150 kilos, heavier than a big NFL linebacker, but running at highway speeds for short bursts. They didn't just peck, they hammered prey with downward strikes, probably snapping necks in a single blow. Just be thankful you didn't have to take the trash out at night with a 2.5-meter murder chicken lurking in the bushes, staring at you like you're the snack pack. And as if it couldn't get any worse than this, let's go back to the water. Filter feeding shark. Picture a shark about 9 meters long as a city bus, gliding through the ocean with its mouth open like a slow-motion vacuum cleaner. That's animals like the extinct megamouth-style giants and their cousins, turning entire clouds of plankton into lunch. Not the strongest bite, not the most vicious hunter, but that gape. You could fit a small car in that mouth just to give a sense of scale. Luckily for us, they were more like floating pool filters than serial killers. Still, imagine night diving and suddenly drifting into a living tunnel of teeth and gills. Technically harmless, emotionally devastating. And remember, these are only honorable mentions. Background monsters. The weird supporting cast that didn't even make the main danger list. If the warm-up round includes bear-sized beavers, linebacker-sized birds, and bus-length vacuum sharks, what does that say about the creatures we're actually ranking? Oh boy, from here on out, every step down the list gets stranger, larger, and a whole lot more deadly. Your poor ancestors walked through that world. You? You just have to listen to it in the dark as we head into the real heavy hitters. Liptodon. If you think a modern armadillo is weird, wait until you scale it up to the size of a tiny car and drop it into the Ice Age. You think it's scary to run into a grizzly in the dark? Try hearing the ground itself start to rumble while a walking boulder rolls past your camp. Glyptodon was basically an armadillo that hit the gym, then the forge, then said, "Armor me again." This extinct tank of a mammal stretched about 10 feet from nose to tail, roughly the length of a small hatchback, and he weighed about as much as a compact car. We're talking 1 to 2 tons of herbivore, just plodding along on stumpy legs like a living wrecking ball that forgot how to sprint. On his back, a domed shell made of fused bony plates, so thick and so tough that early humans probably looked at abandoned shells and thought, yeah, That's housing. There's real evidence that our ancestors may have used empty glyptodon shells as ready-made huts, crawling inside this prehistoric turtle igloo to get out of the wind. Shelter that used to come with a tail. And that tail was no joke. Some species carried a heavy clubbed tail, ringed in armor, turning the back end of this slow vegetarian into a medieval weapon. A swing from that thing could shatter bone, maybe even crack another glyptodon's shell in territorial smackdowns. You wouldn't want to come across two of these guys arguing over a patch of grass. That's a demolition derby at 2 miles an hour. Defense was glyptodon's entire personality. Heavy armor up top, thick, reinforced skull, low center of gravity, and the sheer ability to crush anything unlucky enough to be under those feet if he panicked and charged. Just be thankful you didn't have to dive out of the way of a 1-ton bowling ball that couldn't see you very well. Now picture the human stakes. It's night on the Pleistocene plains. Your poor ancestors are huddled around a tiny fire, trying to stay alive in a world of ice and teeth. The stars are bright, the wind is cutting, and then the ground starts to vibrate. Out of the dark, this hulking dome waddles past, steam from its breath hanging in the air, shell catching the firelight like a rolling boulder made of armor. Luckily for us, Glyptodon was just eating plants, but as if it couldn't get any worse than this was the prey. If the herbivores came built like armored tanks you could live inside, what did the predators that shared their world look like? And how do you even begin to break something like that open? Megatherium. If the walking tanks were the prey, what did a real Ice Age monster look like when it stood up? You think it's scary to bump into a modern sloth slowly blinking at you in a zoo? Just be thankful you didn't meet his cousin from your poor ancestors' nightmares. Megatherium was a ground sloth the size of an elephant. Picture a creature 12 to 20 feet long, lumbering across the frozen plains. When he reared up on his hind legs, he could tower over you like a 2-story building, tail braced like a living tripod. Each hand ended in claws as long as kitchen knives, curved and heavy, 3 hooked blades on a single paw. And yet, day to day, his world moved in slow motion. Imagine a moonlit Ice Age forest, blue light on snow, branches heavy with leaves and frost. Megatherium steps in, each footfall a soft, deep thud you almost feel more than hear. He reaches up, wraps those knife-length claws around an entire branch, and with one lazy pull, brings the whole thing down to his mouth like a salad bar on a stick. He didn't rush, he didn't chase, he just swayed and leaned, muscles rolling under shaggy fur, breathing fog into the cold air. From a distance, he would have looked almost gentle, like the world's largest, slowest living hammock. Perfect for sleep. If you ignored the fact that those tree hooks could open you like a zipper. For a long time, scientists thought Megatherium was a strict plant eater, a giant, harmless gardener of the Ice Age. Then clues started to whisper a different story. Scratches on bones, odd wear on those massive claws and teeth, hints that this gentle giant might have gotten opportunistic. Maybe he scavenged carcasses, ripping open frozen meat. Maybe if something came too close, he was savage for a few terrifying seconds. You wouldn't want to come across that by accident. One swipe of those claws, backed by a body weighing several tons, could probably disembowel a predator stupid enough to test him. Modern lions, tigers, even bears look dangerous. But this thing was a walking fortress of muscle and bone, with built-in machetes on every hand. As if it couldn't get any worse than this was still technically a herbivore. Luckily for us, Megatherium is long extinct, frozen in time with the rest of the Ice Age megafauna. But if the sloths came armed like that, What did the true apex predators of that era look like when they stepped out of dark snowstorms, breath steaming, eyes reflecting starlight? If the gardeners were deadly, wait until you meet the hunters that followed the herds through the blizzard. Arctidus. If the gardeners of the Ice Age were deadly, the bouncers were worse. You think it's scary to meet a modern grizzly on a hiking trail? Now imagine something taller, leaner, faster, and mean enough to steal lunch from anything it wanted. Arctidus, the giant short-faced bear. This guy wasn't built like the pudgy campground raiders you know. He was all legs and menace. Standing on all fours, he already loomed over a modern grizzly. Stand him up, and you're looking at a wall of fur and muscle close to 12 feet tall. That's basketball hoop height with claws. Your poor ancestors would have had to tilt their heads all the way back just to see the end of his snout. Those long legs made him look almost unnervingly tall and lean, like someone had grabbed a regular bear and hit stretch in a character creator. And those legs weren't just for show. Based on limb proportions, some estimates suggest Arctidus could sprint at 40 miles per hour or more. That's racehorse speed. Over short distances, he could literally run down a galloping horse, or at least keep it honest. But here's the nasty twist. He might not have needed to be a master hunter. He could just be the world's most dangerous bully. Picture this. Packs of dire wolves bring down a bison, or a saber-toothed cat finally wrestles something to the ground through snow and blood and effort. They're panting, exhausted, ready to eat. Then the ground starts to vibrate. Out of the white haze, Arctidus strides in like he owns the place. 12 feet of move or I make you move. He lowers that massive head, flashes teeth built to crush bone, and that's it. The wolves scatter. The cats back off. He was savage without even needing to throw a punch. Why waste energy chasing prey when you can just follow the herds, follow the killers, and show up late to the party to take the whole buffet? Now scale this monster to you. His paws, each one likely bigger than your face, may be close to a dinner plate with claws. A single swat could break bones or send a human flying. The bite force? Way beyond a modern black bear, easily strong enough to crack thick Ice Age bones like chew toys. You, standing there at maybe 5.5 or 6 feet, would barely reach his chest when he reared up. You wouldn't want to come across that silhouette in a snowstorm. Just be thankful you didn't share a campsite with him. Luckily for us, Arctidus is long extinct, frozen into the fossil record with the rest of those vicious megafauna. Because as bad as a sprinting bear the size of a small car sounds, as if it couldn't get any worse than this. Some Ice Age threats didn't charge you across open ground at all. They waited above your head, or rose, silently, from the dark water right beside you. So while you're picturing that sprinting bear the size of a small car crashing through the trees, remember, he was just one of the furry nightmares your poor ancestors had to deal with. We've already walked past living tanks in armor, clawed sloths that could rip open a car door, and those giant short-faced bears that didn't even bother hunting their own prey half the time. They just showed up and stole the kill. You think it's scary to run into a modern grizzly on a hiking trail? Just be thankful you didn't have a 12-foot bear built like a linebacker, a ground sloth with meat hook claws, and a walking boulder with a tail club all sharing the same Ice Age neighborhood. That was the mammal chapter of this horror story. So, let's slam that book shut for a second. Pattern break. We're done with fur. We're hanging up the claws, the saber teeth, the bone armor. Because as if it couldn't get any worse than this, some of the most dangerous extinct killers didn't roar at you from 4 legs. They stared you down from a beak. We're stepping into the age of feathers and faces as weapons. These next bad boys didn't waste time putting claws on their hands. They turned their entire skulls into living guillotines. No sabers in the mouth, just a single hooked blade the size of your forearm coming straight down like an axe. Forget the cute little songbirds outside your window. Picture a bird taller than you, heavier than you, and absolutely convinced you're on the menu. Terror birds. Apex avian predators so vicious paleontologists literally had to call them that. Oh boy. Some of these birds weren't just big, they were fast. Titanus, one of the classic terror birds, could look a grown human in the eye and probably outrun him in a sprint. Long, muscular legs, heavy clawed feet, and a center of gravity built for charging down fleeing prey. Luckily for us, you will never have to test your mile time with a giant murder ostrich barreling up behind you. That's the theme of this next stretch. Birds that moved like sprinters and struck like snipers. No slow circling in the sky, no gentle glide. Just a blur of feathers, a hammer-blow beak, and a neck that whipped down with terrifying precision. One hit to the skull, one crushing strike to the spine, and the hunt was over. So before we meet them, do this. Imagine you're alone on an open plain. No trees, no rocks, nowhere to hide. You hear heavy clawed footsteps thudding behind you, getting closer, kicking up dust. You spin around expecting a wolf, a lion, maybe some Ice Age mammal. Instead, something with wings tucked tight, eyes locked, and a hooked beak already dropping for the kill is bearing down on you. That's not a nightmare. That's our next predator. Titanus. You think it's scary to see a big bird swoop down for your fries at the beach? Just be thankful you didn't live in the age of Titanus Wallery. This was a true terror bird. Titanus stood around 2.5 meters tall, that's over 8 feet, so he was looking down on most humans and eye to eye with a pro basketball forward. Picture a feathered sprinter body on top of a pair of weaponized track legs, ending in claws, with a skull that basically was a living hatchet. You wouldn't want to come across this guy on an open field. Titanus didn't fly. He didn't need to. Those legs were built to run, with long, powerful bones and massive muscle attachments. Some estimates put him in the same league as a human Olympic sprinter, or better, except he could probably hold that speed for longer. You? You get maybe a few seconds of panic sprint before you're gasping. Titanus keeps coming, claws biting into the dirt, each step a drumbeat. And the real problem wasn't just the speed. It was what waited at the end of that charge. Titanus had a huge, hooked beak, thick and deep, like a battle axe crossed with a can opener. The best guess is that he chased prey down, then used those legs like a spring, driving the beak in a brutal downward strike. Imagine a guillotine that aims. One slam to the skull, neck, or spine, and the fight is over. He probably went after early mammals, maybe even those little prehistoric horses the size of big dogs. Oh boy. Picture this in slow motion. Dawn on a North American plain. A cluster of small horses and dog-sized mammals grazing in the mist, tails flicking, ears twitching, everything quiet except the soft crunch of plants. Then, far off, a faint tremor in the ground. The tremor grows. Footsteps. Heavy. Fast. Getting closer. Birds today flap and scatter from the grass, but this bird doesn't fly. He runs. A blur of feathers and muscle bursts through the haze, towering over the herd. One horse bolts, hooves scrabbling. For a second, you think it might actually escape. It doesn't. Titanus closes the distance in a few strides, leans forward, and that massive head swings down. The hooked beak hammers into the side of the neck with a sickening crack. The body drops mid-gallop, legs folding, dust exploding around it. One strike. Hunt finished. Your poor ancestors would have been background noise in that scene at best. Luckily for us, Titanus is long extinct, and the terror birds of North America are gone. But as if it couldn't get any worse than this, some of Titanus's cousins took a very different route. They didn't rule with speed. They ruled with sheer size and attitude, growing into giant flightless monsters on isolated islands where running wasn't as important as being the largest, meanest bird on the beach. And one of those oversized island bruisers is stomping into our list next. Moa and Haast's eagle, the skyfall ambush. You think it's scary to walk through a forest today and hear a hawk scream overhead? In ancient New Zealand, that sound basically meant something big is about to die. And most of the time, that something was a walking buffet with drumstick legs the size of tree trunks. Moa. These were not your backyard chickens. Giant moa were flightless birds that turned the forests of Aotearoa into a Jurassic petting zoo gone wrong. Some species stood up to 3.6 meters tall, taller than a basketball hoop, with long necks and massive bodies. No wings, no flight, just a couple of walking tree trunks of meat-browsing leaves like slow, feathery giraffes. If you were a predator, that's not a bird. That's an all-you-can-eat buffet waddling through the ferns. And New Zealand built the perfect villain to match: Haast's eagle. This was the largest eagle known to have ever lived. Wingspan up to 3 meters, as wide as a small car. Females may have weighed over 15 kilograms, basically a flying cinder block with knives attached. Its talons were as big as a tiger's claws, thicker than your fingers, curved like meat hooks. You wouldn't want to come across this guy if you were anything bigger than a rabbit. Or, a horse-sized bird. Haast's eagle didn't chase prey on the ground. He fell on them. Perched high in trees or on cliffs, he was savage, turning gravity into a weapon. Picture it. A silent shape drops from the canopy, hitting speeds that might have rivaled a diving golden eagle today, over 150 kilometers per hour. Then, boom. It slams into the moa's back like a feathery missile. Talons punch through skin, muscle, even bone, gripping the spine and pelvis. One wing beat to stabilize, one hooked beak to go for the neck. Hunt over. Just be thankful you didn't have to walk under that. For Moa, the sky itself was dangerous. No big cats, no wolves, no land mammals at all. The apex predator was a bird that turned vertical space into a kill zone. As if it couldn't get any worse than this, early humans eventually showed up in this death arena too. The first Maori who reached New Zealand walked into a land of giant birds and sky assassins. Some of their stories talk about huge, man-eating birds that could snatch people or strike from above. A lot of researchers think those legends may be cultural echoes of encounters with the last Haast's eagles, desperate and dangerous as their moa prey disappeared. Your poor ancestors might have actually looked up and thought, "The sky is hunting us." Luckily for us, those monsters are extinct. But if the air could drop a killing machine the size of a child onto your back, imagine what waited in the oceans, where you couldn't even see the danger rising from below. You think it's scary to swim where you can't see what's below you? Try walking through a forest where the danger is so big it doesn't even notice you exist. Elephant birds. On Madagascar, birds didn't just take over the skies, they tried out being tanks. These were some of the heaviest birds ever to walk the planet, towering up to 3 meters tall. You're looking at a feathered wall as heavy as several adult humans stacked into one waddling unit. Not some skinny ostrich either. This was a walking boulder with legs, and those legs were ridiculous. Thick, pillar-like, built to hold hundreds of kilos without snapping. They weren't sprinters, but if one of these giants decided to move, you'd feel it. Imagine a whole group pushing through dense island forest, branches snapping, trunks shivering, the ground giving you a slow, rolling earthquake with every step. You wouldn't want to come across that if you were the size of, well, you. The twist? They were almost certainly herbivores. No hooked raptor beaks, no saber teeth, no craving for prey. They just wanted plants, fruits, soft leaves, maybe fallen seeds. But when you weigh more than a small car, you don't need claws to be deadly. All you need is panic. One sudden scare in the twilight, one elephant bird spooked by a sound, and that gentle plant eater turns into a runaway boulder, plowing through anything unlucky enough to be in the way. Just be thankful you didn't have to raise kids in that forest. Stay close, and if the ground starts shaking, climb something. Fast. And then there were the eggs. Oh boy. Elephant bird eggs were gigantic, bigger than a human head, some large enough to hold the volume of about 24 chicken eggs. It's like the bird world said, let's try making a football you can live inside. For ancient humans reaching Madagascar, that was a breakfast buffet in a single shell. One egg could feed a whole group of your poor ancestors. But that's where island magic turns into island tragedy. Madagascar's ecosystem was fragile, full of unique giants with nowhere else to go. A few too many hunts, a few too many stolen eggs, some habitat burned or cleared, and these walking monoliths slipped into the dark column labeled extinct. Luckily for us, the only way you'll meet one now is in a museum. Picture it one last time. A twilight forest, blue and purple light leaking through the canopy, silhouettes of elephant birds drifting between tree trunks, footsteps soft yet earth-shaking, like distant drums under a blanket. Then the pattern flips. We've seen what happens when birds try to be the largest land animals. Next, we're heading into something way stranger. When rodents and rabbits decide to scale up into nightmare territory and audition for the role of megabeast. Joseph, Ortigazia. So when rodents and rabbits audition for megabeast status, who gets the lead role? A giant guinea pig with sword teeth. Joseph Ortigazia. You think it's scary to see a mouse run across your kitchen at 2 a.m.? Try a rodent that weighed over a ton, bigger than a modern bison, just casually chewing plants by the river. This thing wasn't rat-sized, it was car-sized. Some estimates put it at more than 10 feet long, with a skull like a cinder block and front teeth the size of short swords. Those teeth are the real nightmare fuel. 2 massive incisors jutting out of its skull, thick, curved, and constantly growing. Paleontologists think they weren't just for nibbling leaves. They were more like elephant tusks that forgot they were supposed to be on an elephant. That means digging up roots, stripping bark, maybe even shoving rivals around. Its whole face was basically a Swiss Army knife attached to a tank. Picture a capybara, the chill, bath-loving rodent you see in memes. Now stretch it, bulk it up, and keep going until it's taller than you at the shoulder and weighs more than your car. Oh boy. Same gentle, dopey expression. Same basic body plan. But behind that peaceful look, a jaw that could crush bone if it had to. You wouldn't want to come across an angry one blocking your trail. Scientists have modeled its bite force, and it's ridiculous. We're talking power in the range of large carnivores, snapping down with enough pressure to crack open tough seeds, branches, maybe even the limbs of anything dumb enough to get too close. Those sword teeth weren't just for show. They were plugged into a bite that could turn plant eater into don't test me very fast. Just be thankful you didn't have to share a riverside path with a herd of these guys, wading through the shallows like oversized guinea pig tanks. One step, and the ground shakes. One chomp, and a log snaps like a breadstick. And remember, this is still a herbivore we're talking about. An herbivore built like a bison, with a built-in pair of ivory crowbars. Luckily for us, Joseph Ortegazia is long extinct, living only in fossils and nightmares. But as if it couldn't get any worse than this gentle giant with a killer bite, it didn't roam alone. In those same ancient ecosystems, there were predators built to deal with megafauna like this, with jaws designed not just to bite, but to saw and slice. If the rodents could outweigh your car, wait until you meet the things that tried to eat them. Giant beavers and horned gophers. If you thought a car-sized rodent was bad, you think it's scary now. The Ice Age went, "Hold my pond," because one of the strangest bruisers in that world was a beaver. Castoroides. This thing was not your cute little log chewer. This extinct giant beaver was roughly the size of a black bear. Picture a beaver as long as you are tall, weighing a couple 100 pounds, with incisors the size of machetes jutting from its skull. Those teeth weren't for fine carpentry. They were massive chisels built into a battering ram head. And yet, weirdly, it probably wasn't the master engineer its modern cousins are. Its teeth were shaped more for gnawing vegetation than precision cutting, and its body was so big and chunky that building intricate dams like today's beavers might have been off the table. Imagine the largest beaver ever, and he can't even do the one DIY project beavers are famous for. Oh boy, but you wouldn't want to come across one in a tight riverbank channel. That size alone made it dangerous in close quarters. A panicked Castoroides launching itself into the water beside you would hit like a furry boulder. One sideways slam of that body, one defensive swing of the head, and those giant incisors could open a predator, or your poor ancestors, like a zipper. No malice, just, "Please get out of my way," with deadly side effects. And while the beaver giants were throwing their weight around, the smaller rodents were getting spiky. Enter the horned gophers. These were little burrowing rodents, but their skulls carried actual bony projections, like tiny helmets that forgot when to stop growing. Some species had paired knobs or ridges that stuck up so much that, if you saw one alive today, you'd swear someone glued fantasy cosplay gear onto a prairie dog. Scientists think those horns could have been for display, for ramming, or for making a predator think twice about chomping down on that end. So now you've got herbivores coming in 3 flavors: giant, armored, or horned. This is what an evolutionary arms race looks like when the plant eaters are under constant pressure. You don't just munch grass. You bulk up until you're bear-sized. You grow bony helmets. You carry spikes on your face. Even prey animals had to be a little bit vicious just to make it through breakfast. Just be thankful you didn't have to tiptoe through those wetlands at night. Because if the gentle plant eaters were this well armed, what did the true carnivores look like? The ones that evolved specifically to crack shells, pierce armor, and drag giants like Castoroides into the dark? Luckily for us, the only place you'll meet them next is in your dreams. So far, your dreams have been crowded. Tank-armored sloths trundling around like living SUVs, one-ton rodents swinging those front teeth like built-in crowbars, bear-sized beavers lurking by the water's edge. It's been a whole traffic jam of claws, armor, and attitude. Your poor ancestors couldn't walk 10 steps without bumping into something that looked like a science fiction boss fight. But all of that danger has had one thing in common: solid ground. You could at least hear it coming. Hooves thundering, armor plates clanking, branches snapping as some giant herbivore decided you were standing in its salad. You think it's scary to tiptoe past a short-faced bear or a saber-toothed cat. At least those nightmares had the decency to make noise. So let's pull the plug on the grasslands for a minute. We're leaving the mud, the snow, and the forests behind. And we're stepping off the edge, straight into the ancient oceans. Because as vicious as those land mammals were, the real quiet professionals of extinction were waiting under the waves, where the first sign you were prey was teeth closing around you. Out here, we trade fur and feathers for fins and cartilage. All that bone armor and shaggy insulation? Gone. Now it's smooth scales, streamlined torpedoes of muscle, and skeletons that flex instead of crack. Stampedes get replaced by silent, circling shadows. No warning growl, no rustling bush, just a shape that appears below you like a moving continent. And then, nothing. Just be thankful you didn't have to swim in those seas. Because the next monsters on this list aren't lumbering ground sloths or shy giant rodents. We're diving into sharks that made great whites look like appetizers, marine reptiles that treated other reptiles like snack food, and bizarre aquatic hunters that vacuumed up prey in slow motion. These weren't just big. They were built from the blueprint of how do we make the water itself feel dangerous? Imagine floating in dark water, legs dangling, nothing but blackness underneath. You feel a pressure wave first, a cold push against your skin. Something huge glides just beneath your feet, so close you could almost touch the dorsal ridge if you dared. You don't see eyes, you don't see a mouth, but he knows exactly where you are. Oh boy. Luckily for us, these guys are extinct, because you wouldn't want to come across what's coming next. Sharks with bite forces that turn bone into dust clouds. Marine reptiles long enough to blot out the sun above you. Strange fish that hunted by sensing your heartbeat in the dark. If you thought a 1-ton rodent was overkill, wait until the ocean decides you're on the menu. Take a deep breath. Hold it. We're going down to meet them. Megalodon. You think it's scary to swim in the ocean today, worrying about a great white or two? Just be thankful you didn't drop into the water when this thing was cruising the depths. Megalodon, the submarine with teeth. This wasn't just a big shark. This was a shark that may have stretched over 15 meters long, longer than a city bus, weighing as much as a fully loaded jet. Its teeth? Each one about the size of a human hand, thick and serrated, like stone knives sharpened for war. One bite from that 40,000 psi jaw and bone wouldn't crack. It would basically turn into a dust cloud. Modern great white sharks, the ones that headline all the scary documentaries, tap out around 6 meters. Next to Megalodon, a great white is basically a moody teenager standing beside a pro wrestler. Same general shape, sure, but the scale is insulting. And he was savage. Megalodon didn't waste that size chasing little fish. Its favorite prey was likely whales and other large marine mammals. Picture early baleen whales and dolphin-like creatures gliding along, thinking they're the largest things in the sea. Then the real landlord shows up. Scientists think Megalodon hunted smart, not just fast. It may have ambushed from below and behind, coming up from the dark blue where the light dies out. Instead of going straight for the head, it probably targeted fins and soft tissue, crippling a whale first, then circling back while the ocean turned red. Efficient. Vicious. No hero soundtrack, just bubbles and silence. Imagine this in slow motion. A pod of early whales drifts through clear blue water, mothers and calves keeping close, their songs echoing like distant thunder. Everything feels calm, peaceful. Then, far below them, something moves. A shadow the size of a train, rising. No roar, no warning. Just a sudden burst of motion as Megalodon rockets upward, jaws opening wider than your whole body, slamming into a whale's flank. Fins shredded, ribs snapping like twigs. In 1 second, the water is a snow globe of blood and blubber. Luckily for us, this all played out millions of years before your poor ancestors ever had to panic about beach safety. You wouldn't want to come across a 60-foot shark that treats whales like snack bars. And as if it couldn't get any worse than this, Megalodon isn't even the strangest shark story in the fossil record. Some extinct sharks didn't rely on pure speed and bulk at all. They turned their jaws into bizarre machines, teeth arranged in spirals, blades that sliced like saws, and gentle giants that vacuumed the ocean with giant filters. If a bus-sized bone crusher wasn't weird enough for you, wait until you meet the sharks that weaponized geometry. Helicoprion. You thought a bus-sized bone crusher was bad. You think it's scary to bump into a great white on a night dive? Just be thankful you didn't drop into the ancient ocean with this guy. Helicoprion, the buzzsaw shark from your sleep paralysis. He wasn't a true shark, more of a shark-like prehistoric fish, but you wouldn't want to come across him either way. Instead of a normal lower jaw, Helicoprion carried a full spiral of teeth, a whorl, tucked where his chin should be. Imagine a circular saw blade made of fangs, growing and curling in on itself as old teeth got pushed inward and new ones erupted at the edge. For decades, scientists had no clue what they were looking at. Fossils were just these weird tooth spirals. People tried sticking them on the nose, on the back, even like a forehead horn. Oh boy. In reality, that buzzsaw sat in the lower jaw. As he bit down, the spiral likely rolled backward, feeding fresh teeth into position, dragging soft prey deeper into the mouth while older teeth retired into the inner coil. Picture it in slow motion. A squid drifts through dark, silty water. Out of the gloom, Helicoprion glides in, body long and smooth, almost lazy. No wild thrashing, no T-Rex drama, just a quiet approach. Then the jaw swings up and that tooth whirl starts to roll like someone hit play on a circular saw underwater. Flesh meets rotating enamel, and the squid goes from one piece to several very quickly. Luckily for us, Helicoprion didn't have the crushing power of the largest modern sharks. He was built for slicing soft things, squid, fish, anything without thick armor. Think of him as a deadly deli slicer cruising the Permian seas, trimming his prey into bite-sized ribbons while he stayed eerily calm. Now imagine you're dream diving beside him. The water is heavy and murky, green-brown and endless. His body moves in slow, hypnotic waves, tail barely flicking. That jaw, though, keeps drawing your eye. The teeth catch stray beams of light as the spiral turns, then disappears, then turns again, like a living gear. It's beautiful and completely wrong. The kind of thing your brain would only invent at 3 a.m. when you can't move. If you drew this animal from scratch today, people would say it's too much, too weird, too B-movie poster. A fish with a buzzsaw face sounds like science fiction, not something that actually swam in Earth's oceans and hunted real prey for millions of years. Your poor ancestors of the sea had to deal with geometry that bites back. And as if it couldn't get any worse than this spinning mouth nightmare, Helicoprion was just one strategy. While he sliced his meals into neat little strips, other ancient marine beasts went in totally different directions. Some turned their mouths into living nets that filtered clouds of tiny creatures. Others built jaws that crushed shells like industrial presses. We're about to meet the ones that didn't just cut their food. They pulverized the entire buffet. Filter-feeding giants, the gentle vacuum cleaners of doom. You think it's scary to swim with a great white? Try drifting through an ancient sea where the sharks were the size of buses and came at you with their mouths already wide open. Meet the filter-feeding giants. Long before blue whales stole the title of largest gentle eaters, prehistoric oceans had their own slow-motion vacuum cleaners. Imagine massive sharks like the extinct megamouth relatives and broad manta-like fish cruising just under the surface, 30, 40, even 50 feet long, gliding with lazy tail beats. Instead of dagger teeth, they had huge, gaping mouths lined with comb-like structures that strained out clouds of plankton, krill, and any tiny animals unlucky enough to be in the way. They weren't stalking big prey. They didn't need to. They just opened up, moved forward, and let the ocean come to them. From a distance, they might look peaceful. Up close? Oh boy. You're basically watching a living freight train made of cartilage and muscle. One of these things drifting past you would block out the sun like a moving eclipse. Their jaws could be wider than you are tall, and while they weren't trying to bite you in half, colliding with one at cruising speed would be like getting sideswiped by a slow, unstoppable wall. Just be thankful you didn't have to navigate traffic in that ocean. Picture this as a sleep scene. You're floating in warm, dim water. Above you, a shadow slides by. A giant filter-feeding shark, mouth open in a huge oval. Tiny organisms glow faintly in the light, swirling toward that dark opening like stars spiraling into a black hole in slow motion. Every lazy sweep of his tail pulls another glittering cloud of life into the darkness, then out through the gills like a silent, cosmic fountain. No sudden lunges, no vicious ambush, just endless, methodical feeding. These giants were quiet, but they were still dangerous in a different way. By gulping down tons of plankton and small fish every day, they rewired the whole food web around them. Where they fed heavily, plankton thinned out, small fish moved, and with them went the predators that hunted those fish. Entire schools of ancient sharks and bony fish had to time their lives around these drifting mouths, gathering in shadow zones where the giants rarely passed. They were like roaming weather systems made of flesh, creating safe pockets for some creatures and dead zones for others. Luckily for us, you'll never accidentally snorkel into one of those mouths. But don't get too relaxed with these gentle giants, because we're about to yank you right out of this calm, plankton-scented dream. Pattern interrupt. We're leaving the slow cruisers behind and diving back into the real nightmares. The hunters that didn't just drift and filter. They chased. They crushed shells like soda cans. They tore armor, bone, and anything breathing into bite-sized pieces. If the filter feeders were the ocean's vacuums, the next creatures on our list were its chainsaws. Mosasaurus and Pliosaurus. You think it's scary to swim in the open ocean today, worrying about a great white or an orca? Just be thankful you didn't pop up in the Cretaceous, because the surface was just the lid on a blender full of reptiles that turned everything into chum. Mosasaurus. Imagine a Komodo dragon. Stretch him out to the size of a city bus, then throw him in the water and give him a shark tail. That's the vibe. These were massive, snake-bodied marine reptiles with long, muscular torsos, paddle-like limbs, and a tail built like a scaly rocket booster. The largest species could grow over 15 meters long, easily rivaling a modern humpback's length, and when he moved, he didn't glide like a lazy whale. He launched, a living torpedo with jaws. Those jaws were the real horror. Double rows of backward curving teeth, a skull nearly as long as you are tall, and a mouth that could gape wide enough to swallow a dolphin in a single bite. Fossils show belly contents that include fish, turtles, ammonites, even other mosasaurs. Cannibal lizard. He was savage. They likely used that powerful tail to coil, then explode forward, smashing into prey from below or behind before the victim even knew the water had gone dark. Then, as if it couldn't get any worse than this, you get Pliosaurus. Short neck, enormous head, huge barrel-shaped body with 4 giant flippers. Picture a crocodile fused with a submarine and then given a jaw upgrade. Some skulls are over 2 meters long, with teeth the size of bananas, and bite force estimates that push into or beyond modern crocodile territory. You wouldn't want to come across that silhouette rising out of the gloom. Where Mosasaurus was a streamlined, whipping missile, Pliosaurus was a 4-limbed battering ram. Those flippers could pump like underwater wings, letting it accelerate in sudden bursts, then pivot and lunge. Their prey menu was basically, yes, fish, squid, marine reptiles, maybe even juvenile ichthyosaurs and early whales in later relatives. If it moved and had meat, it was on the list. Modern saltwater crocodiles can crush bone with over 3,000 psi of bite force. Orcas can tear seals in half. These guys? Their skull size alone tells you they were in the same league or worse, with long, reinforced snouts built to clamp, shake, and not let go. In the tight kill zone around their snouts, escape odds were basically 0. Once those teeth closed, your story ended. Luckily for us, all of this played out millions of years before your poor ancestors even thought about dipping toes in the surf. But it does raise a nasty little question. If the oceans were ruled by monsters like these, what kind of creatures were stalking the shorelines and riverbanks where the first land animals, and eventually our own family line, tried to survive? Sarcosuchus. If the oceans were bad, the rivers were worse. You think it's scary wading into a murky lake today, worrying about leeches and the odd snapping turtle? Try sharing a river with something scientists literally nicknamed supercroc. Sarcosuchus was a crocodile relative cranked up to nightmare mode. Modern saltwater crocodile? Around 20 feet on a good day. Sarcosuchus could hit up to 40 feet, about 12 meters of armored muscle and bad intentions. You're not looking at a big croc. You're looking at the largest river ambush predator your poor ancestors would ever have run from, if they'd been unlucky enough to exist back then. Picture a wide, lazy Cretaceous river in what is now Africa. The surface looks calm, maybe a few ripples, some reeds, nothing dangerous. Herds of dinosaurs shuffle down to drink, juveniles wobbling at the edge like they're at the world's deadliest water fountain. Under that muddy sheet of water, Sarcosuchus is just there, motionless, waiting. He was savage in his patience. Then everything happens at once. A shadow surges upward, mud explodes, and a wall of teeth and water slams into the shoreline. This thing didn't just snap at fish. It erupted out of the river like a scaled torpedo, jaws open wide enough to grab a dinosaur's entire leg, tail whipping, claws churning the bank into flying dirt. 1 second you're thirsty, the next you're airborne and upside down in a crocodilian death metal concert. Its skull was a weapon all by itself, nearly as long as a grown person, stretched out with a bizarre, bulbous snout, packed with dozens of conical teeth. Those jaws weren't just sharp. They were built to clamp and not let go, with crushing power focused on grabbing and holding large, struggling prey. Juvenile dinosaurs, big fish, anything dumb enough to silhouette itself against the waterline became an instant physics lesson in bite force. Just be thankful you didn't have to tiptoe down to that river for a drink. Imagine standing at the shore, seeing nothing, hearing nothing, maybe relaxing a little, while a predator longer than a bus is parked right under your feet, staring up, deciding if you're worth the effort. Oh boy. That peaceful riverbank suddenly feels like a trap waiting to spring. And as if it couldn't get any worse than this, Sarcosuchus was just the warm-up act. Because if the rivers were hiding giants like that, the land itself was no safer. Some of the strangest and deadliest animals of all time didn't swim at all. They walked on 4 legs, they turned their bodies into tanks, and they literally wore their bones on the outside. You think it's scary dipping a toe in those prehistoric rivers we just crawled out of? Buzzsaw jaws in the dark, submarine sharks cruising like silent torpedoes, and crocodiles big enough to drag a dinosaur under like it's a pool toy. We've been swimming with nightmares. Helicoprion turning its mouth into a circular saw. Mosasaurs and Megalodon turning open water into a no-escape zone. Dinosuchus and Sarcosuchus lurking at the shoreline, just waiting for something with legs to make one wrong move. Every ripple suddenly felt like a trap waiting to spring. So let's dry off, crawl back onto land, take a breath, feel safer. Oh boy, bad news. We're not walking into a peaceful Jurassic meadow. We're marching straight into a world where animals took one look at all those vicious predators and said, "Fine, I'll just become a tank." Instead of streamlining their bodies for speed or stealth, these guys upgraded their skeletons. Bone plates fused into shields, spines locked together into domes, tails turned into wrecking balls. They didn't just wear armor. They were armor. Living, snorting, plant-eating fortresses that could shrug off bites from predators that would shred almost anything alive today. Just be thankful you didn't have to walk across a Pleistocene plain with one of these in a bad mood. Glyptodon, for example, looked like an armadillo that someone hit car size on. A domed shell so tough your poor ancestors might have used the empty ones as shelters. You wouldn't want to come across a predator trying to chew through that. It'd be like biting a bowling ball. And these tanks weren't harmless lawnmowers. A lot of them were herbivores, sure, but herbivore does not mean nice. Give a peaceful grazer a tail club the size of a sledgehammer, or shoulder spikes like medieval weapons, and suddenly anything that got too close could be crushed, gored, or sent flying. Luckily for us, the only thing you risk from modern cows is a dirty look and maybe a kick. They're extinct cousins? One step closer and you're a physics experiment. So picture this. The water is far behind you. The air is hot and still. A quiet, dusty plain stretches out, nothing moving but heat shimmer. No roaring theropods, no splashes, just silence. Then the ground starts to tremble. Not the light, quick thud of a predator's charge. A slow, rolling rumble. Pebbles dance. Dust lifts. Something massive is coming, but it's not running. It doesn't need to. A silhouette appears on the horizon, low, wide, and impossibly solid, like a boulder growing legs. That's where we're headed next. Into the age of walking fortresses, bone-plated juggernauts, and tail-swinging wrecking crews that turned "eat your greens" into a deadly lifestyle choice. Ankylosaurus. You think it's scary to bump into a rhino in the dark? Just be thankful you didn't round a corner and meet a living tank with a built-in wrecking ball. Ankylosaurus was basically a 4-legged bunker. Low to the ground, wide as a compact car, and wrapped in bony plates called osteoderms, he looked like someone welded a crocodile to a battleship. From his neck to his hips, even his eyelids had armor. Predators weren't seeing dinner. They were seeing dental insurance problems. This thing was huge. Up to 25 or even 30 feet long, tipping the scales at 6 to 8 tons. That's rhino weight territory, creeping into small car mass, but riding on stumpy, power-packed legs. Picture a sedan that decided to become a tortoise, then overdid it. From above, most meat-eaters could only see a moving shield wall. Teeth coming down from the top would just hit bone, horn, and more bone. Luckily for us, we only meet him in museums because his defense didn't stop at hard to chew. It hit back, literally. Ankylosaurus ended his tail with a massive club, fused vertebrae wrapped in dense bone, like nature duct-taped a cinder block to a whip. Scientists estimate a full swing could generate forces strong enough to break bone. Not just crack it, shatter it. You wouldn't want to come across that tail in a bad mood. Picture a hungry tyrannosaur stalking in, all teeth and confidence. He circles, looking for a soft spot. The underbelly? The legs? Maybe if he just lunges fast enough. Ankylosaurus stands there, pretending to be a rock with opinions. Then the tail moves. One step too close, one misjudged angle, and that club whips around like a medieval flail. It slams into a shin or an ankle. Snap. A 2-ton predator suddenly has a broken leg, ribs caved in, or a crushed foot. The hunter becomes the limping, bleeding thing, trying not to become someone else's prey. Oh boy, you think modern body armor is impressive? This guy turned, "Please don't eat me," into, "Touch me," and you leave in pieces. What's wild is that Ankylosaurus was an herbivore. He just wanted to eat ferns and low shrubs in peace, but the arms race of the Cretaceous meant plants came with a free side of violence. He was savage only when he had to be, a walking reminder that in deep time, defense could be just as deadly as any set of fangs. And as if it couldn't get any worse than this living tank with a wrecking ball tail, some of the mammals that came later took the armor idea and ran with it. Imagine not just a plated back, but an entire domed shell of bone, car-sized, rolling across Ice Age plains. If Ankylosaurus was the original armored truck, our next creatures were full-on mobile bunkers your poor ancestors might have tried to hunt or hide inside. Dodocuris. If Ankylosaurus was the original armored truck, Dodocuris was the Ice Age upgrade pack. You think it's scary running into a grizzly on a hike today? Try sharing a continent with a walking boulder the size of a small car, wearing a bone dome and swinging a medieval weapon for a tail. Dodocuris was a giant glyptodont, a distant cousin of the armadillo that said, "Armor? Yeah, I'll take all of it." Its shell wasn't just plates, it was a fused, domed shield of bone, like a living bunker rolling across the pampas of South America. Some shells were over 4 feet high and more than 10 feet long. Saber-toothed cats, giant bears, anything that wanted a bite of this guy's soft underbelly had to get through a literal tank first. And that tail. Oh boy. At the end of its long, stiff tail, Dodocuris carried a huge, spiked club, a ball of bone studded with ridges and knobs. Picture Ankylosaurus's wrecking ball tail, reborn in a mammal, millions of years later. Swing that at 30 miles an hour, and you're looking at shattered legs, crushed ribs, maybe even a broken saber-tooth skull if a predator got too bold. You wouldn't want to come across one in a bad mood. Predators probably tried to flip them, rush the sides, or go for the face, but that dome shell wrapped low and tight. Bite down on that, and you're just sanding your teeth on armor. So you've got vicious cats with steak knife fangs, giant terror birds with axe beaks, and then this rolling bunker that can counterattack like a wrecking crane. Dangerous neighborhood. And your poor ancestors might have seen it all. Early humans in South America almost certainly overlapped with the last glyptodonts. There's a good chance they hunted them, cracked them open for meat, and when the animal was gone, that empty shell didn't just sit there. Imagine dragging a bone dome back to camp, flipping it over, and suddenly you've got a ready-made hut, windbreak, or even a roof for a storage pit. Just be thankful you didn't have to explain to your friends that your house used to be a very angry mammal. That's convergent evolution in action. First, you get Ankylosaurus in the age of dinosaurs. Low, armored, tail club. Millions of years later, totally different group. Warm-blooded, grazing mammal, and nature builds almost the same blueprint. When the world is full of giant predators, life keeps reinventing the armored tank with a built-in mace. Reptiles did it. Mammals did it. If we'd stuck around long enough, maybe something with feathers would have tried it too. And as if it couldn't get any worse than this living tank with a wrecking ball tail, some creatures didn't stop at armor. They went one step further and turned their entire faces into weapons, not just teeth. We're talking spears, hammers, and saws where a nose should be. Elasmotherium. You think it's scary to bump into a modern rhino on safari? Try scaling that up, slapping a single giant horn on its forehead and dropping it into an endless Ice Age plain. Elasmotherium was basically a shaggy rhinoceros that someone put in mythic beast mode. Picture a huge, hump-backed mammal, taller than a horse at the shoulder, with a long, woolly coat and a skull built to anchor one massive horn. Not a cute little unicorn spike. We're talking a weapon that may have been over a meter long, jutting straight out of its forehead like a living lance. This thing wasn't prancing through fairy forests. He was savage. The horn sat over heavy, reinforced bone, meaning every step of that bulky body was backed by serious structural engineering. One charge from an angry Elasmotherium, and you weren't just getting poked, you were getting impaled, flipped, and probably launched into next week. You wouldn't want to come across one of these if you were a wolf, a cave lion, or, honestly, your poor ancestors creeping across the steppe. That horn could gore a predator or a rival in a single devastating hit. Imagine a 2-ton battering ram accelerating toward you, snow spraying from under its hooves, head lowered, horn locked on target. Modern rhinos are dangerous. This was the Ice Age boss fight. And yet, here's the weird part. Close your eyes for a second and think unicorn. One horn, horse-ish body, roaming wild landscapes in the cold north. Some researchers look at Elasmotherium fossils and ancient stories and go, you know what? Maybe those legends of giant one-horned beasts weren't completely made up. Just be thankful you didn't have to test that theory in person. Now slow the scene down. Night on the snowy steppe. The wind has finally stopped screaming. Above you, green and purple auroras slide silently across the sky. Below, a small herd of Elasmotherium moves through the drifts, shaggy coats glowing faintly in the moonlight. Their breath pours out in white clouds, steaming in the frozen air as they scrape at buried grass with huge, hoofed feet. They don't roar. They don't stalk. They just breathe, snort, and crunch through crusted snow. Every so often, one lifts its head, that enormous horn cutting a clean line against the stars. It's beautiful, it's peaceful, and it's still one of the most deadly herbivores you would ever meet if you got too close. Luckily for us, they're extinct, and we only meet them in fossils and dreams. Because as if it couldn't get any worse than this real-life unicorn with a built-in spear, we're about to leave horns and armor behind entirely. Next up, we dive into a stranger world, where danger doesn't lumber toward you behind a shield. It sprints, it slashes with claws, and sometimes it drops straight out of the sky. Smilodon. You think it's scary to see a modern lion stalking through tall grass? Just be thankful you didn't look up from your cozy little campfire and see this guy instead. Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat. Not a tiger, not a lion, but his own muscular little nightmare. He packed canines up to 18 centimeters long, blades so big they stuck far below his lower jaw like twin daggers someone forgot to put away. Those teeth looked unstoppable. They weren't. They were powerful but fragile, more like surgical scalpels than crowbars. If Smilodon got into a wild, thrashing brawl and those sabers hit bone the wrong way, snap. And a broken saber wasn't just a bad day at the dentist. For a predator built around that weapon, it could mean a slow, miserable starvation. So he hunted like a precision assassin. No chaotic wrestling matches, no sloppy chomping on whatever he could grab. Smilodon probably went for very specific kill shots. The throat, to slice arteries and windpipes, or the soft belly, where one deep, clean stab could end even the largest prey in seconds. One bite, all or nothing. And he had the body to make that one shot count. Smilodon wasn't built like a cheetah, he was a furry tank. Short, thick limbs, a barrel chest, massive shoulders and neck muscles to drive those sabers down with terrifying force. Picture a jaguar that's been hitting the Ice Age gym for a few million years. Instead of sprinting across open plains, he probably played the ambush game, stalking through brush, creeping along rocky outcrops, hugging shadows and tall grass. Then, when some giant herbivore wandered too close, he'd explode forward in a short, brutal rush, latch on, drag it down with that stocky build, and line up the perfect angle for those deadly teeth. Modern big cats do something similar. Lions choke the throat, leopards go for the neck, jaguars crush skulls. But Smilodon turned that strategy into a high-stakes gamble. Every hunt was like defusing a bomb with your face. One bad angle, one kick from a panicked prey animal, and those sabers could shatter. You wouldn't want to come across a hungry Smilodon who'd already lost one tooth. He'd be desperate, and he was savage when desperate. Luckily for us, your poor ancestors only met these guys at the very tail end of their reign. Because as if it couldn't get any worse than this over-armed glass cannon cat, some predators decided sabers were way too risky. Instead of long, delicate blades, they went the opposite direction. Shorter, thicker teeth, and jaws so massive they could crush bone like dry twigs. And one of them would redefine what a bite could do. Dire wolves and cave lions. So if saber-tooths were the glass cannons of the Ice Age, what do you get when nature wants something a bit more durable? You get predators that don't just bite hard, they think in groups. And your poor ancestors met them in person. Dire wolf. This was the gray wolf's heavier, meaner cousin. Imagine a wolf that's stockier, with a bigger head, thicker bones, and jaws built like a hydraulic press. Dire wolves were roughly 20% heavier than modern gray wolves, with crushing teeth tuned for breaking the legs and ribs of giant herbivores. Bison, young mammoths, giant sloths. If it was big and breathing, it was on the menu. You think it's scary hearing a lone wolf howl in the distance today? Try a whole chorus of dire wolves echoing across a frozen valley, each one part of a coordinated hunting machine. Pack tactics meant they didn't need to be the fastest ever. They just needed endurance and teamwork. They could run a big, lumbering prey animal ragged, taking turns nipping at tendons, waiting for that one stumble that turned a chase into a dog pile. And they weren't alone in the dark. Cave lions. These were Ice Age lions on hard mode. Bigger than modern African lions, with long, powerful limbs and a more robust build, they roamed from Europe into Asia, stalking mammoth steppe and frozen forests. Many scientists think the males were mostly mannyless, lean golden phantoms instead of shaggy kings, which honestly makes them look even more like something you wouldn't want to come across in a snowstorm. We know they were real nightmares because our ancestors literally drew them. In caves like Chauvet in France, ancient artists sketched huge lions with careful detail, sometimes in groups, sometimes surrounding prey. Imagine painting the thing that hunts you, from memory. Oh boy, like dire wolves, cave lions were social. Groups could fan out across a valley, some driving herds toward hidden ambushers, others waiting near cliffs or river crossings. One lion on its own is dangerous. 6 moving like a unit. In the dark. In the cold. When you're tired and hungry? That's a horror movie your poor ancestors didn't get to turn off. Picture this. A tiny human camp. A ring of flickering firelight. Kids trying to sleep while adults grip stone-tipped spears. Out beyond the glow, yellow eyes pace. You hear padded footsteps in the snow, low growls, distant howls answering each other from the hills. One wrong step away from the fire, one hunting trip that runs too late, and suddenly you're the one being tracked, surrounded by shapes you can barely see. Just be thankful you didn't have to walk to the watering hole with dire wolves behind you and cave lions ahead of you. Luckily for us, those packs are extinct. But as if it couldn't get any worse than this, the deadliest animal of all time didn't need claws, armor, or saber teeth. He was savage in a different way, with a weapon no other predator ever perfected, a brain sharp enough to rewrite the rules of extinction itself. We've just marched through a parade of muscle and murder. Saber teeth built like daggers, horns that were basically living spears, walking tanks in bone armor, and packs of coordinated killers that turned the Ice Age into a 24/7 horror show. You think it's scary to bump into a bear on a hiking trail today? Try doing that when the bear is 12 feet tall and outruns your horse. Every upgrade so far has been physical. Bigger claws, thicker shells, faster legs, smarter pack tactics, all trying to survive in ecosystems where you were either dangerous or dinner. Your poor ancestors had to tiptoe between Arctodus on land, saber-toothed cats in the brush, and crocodilian submarines waiting at the riverbank. Then something weird happened. The arms race left the body and moved into the skull. Enter us. Humans. Smaller than most of the megafauna, weaker than almost everything we've talked about. No armor, no fangs, no venom. If you strip a human down and drop him in front of a dire wolf pack, he's basically a soft, screaming protein bar. So how did that walking snack become the apex predator of half the planet? Tools, fire, and planning. A sharpened stick turns a flimsy primate into something a mammoth actually has to worry about. Fire lets you cook, scare predators, and burn entire landscapes to push prey exactly where you want them. And once groups start coordinating hunts, you don't need claws when you can throw spears from a distance and trap a woolly rhinoceros at the edge of a cliff. Just be thankful you didn't have to watch this shift in real time. Because when humans show up in the fossil record of a new continent, something familiar keeps happening. The largest, most impressive animals start vanishing. Giant ground sloths disappear in the Americas. Massive marsupial lions and giant kangaroos fade out in Australia. Island dwarf mammoths go silent right after humans arrive with stone tools and hungry families. Is it only climate? Maybe partly. But that timing is suspicious, right? The moment a brain that can plan, ambush, and overhunt walks in, the megafauna check out. The irony is brutal. Many of the monsters we're scared of today in movies and nightmares. They didn't die because they were weak. They were too specialized, too slow to adapt, and they ran into something even more efficient than saber teeth or a 40,000 psi bite. A nervous little primate with a campfire and a plan. Oh boy. From this point on, Every strange extinct creature we talk about lives under that shadow. Giant terror birds, armored glyptodons, bizarre horned rodents, even those pony-sized island mammoths you wouldn't want to come across on a dark beach at night. Their final chapters often overlap with us. We're going back to the non-human monsters now, but keep that in mind. Somewhere off-screen, there's a small figure with a sharp rock, quietly becoming the most dangerous animal that ever lived. Terror birds. Revisited, Titanus versus early humans. We just left that small figure with the sharp rock in the background. Now zoom the camera in. Because you think it's scary to walk through a modern field with coyotes and the occasional angry goose? Just be thankful you didn't take a stroll in North America when the grass hid something much worse. Titanus. This was the local version of the terror birds, a descendant of those giant, flightless, predatory birds that once ruled South America. About 2.5 meters tall, heavy, and built like a sprinting ostrich with a hatchet for a face. Fossils of Titanus walleri show a powerful beak and thick leg bones built to slam down on prey and then finish it with a downward strike. He was savage. So did your poor ancestors ever actually see one? That's where it gets fun. And a little creepy. Titanus fossils in Texas and Florida show it survived surprisingly late, maybe as recent as 2 million to 1.5 million years ago. With some controversial hints, it could have lasted closer to 100,000 years. Early humans and their relatives start pushing into the Americas somewhere between about 30,000 and 15,000 years ago, maybe even a bit earlier, depending on which expert you argue with at 2 a.m. Do those timelines perfectly overlap? Probably not, but they almost touch. There's this thin, foggy gap where a late surviving terror bird and an early human cousin could, in theory, have shared the same continent. Luckily for us, the fossil record is patchy, so we can only squint at the dates and imagine. So imagine. Twilight on a Pleistocene grassland. Low orange light. A small band of early humans, or at least close relatives, moving through waist-high grass with stone tools and fresh meat. The air is quiet in that weird, heavy way that makes your skin crawl. Behind them, something steps. Two-legged. Heavy. But it doesn't sound like any mammal. No 4-beat rhythm, no padded paw thumps. Just a double thud. 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 Like someone dropping logs in slow motion. A predator like Titanus was designed to hunt fast-running mammals. Horses, little camels, maybe young ground sloths. To eyes tuned to 4-legged prey, a small, upright primate would look strange. Not big enough to be a rival giant. Not quite shaped like normal prey. Maybe easy snack. Maybe confusing new competitor. Maybe both. You think it's scary being watched by a lion? Try being sized up by a 9-foot bird that can look you straight in the eye and decide if you're lunch or a problem. And as if it couldn't get any worse than this, terror birds weren't the only evolutionary pranks walking around. Some islands twisted evolution so far that elephants shrank to pony size, rats grew toward dog size, and every step could mean bumping into something that felt inside out and wrong, like nature had flipped the settings just to see if you'd scream. Island rule breakers, pygmy mammoths, and giant rats. You think it's scary walking through a dark forest today, wondering if a wolf or a boar is watching you. Try stepping onto a tiny island where the rules of size are completely broken and everything looks like it came out of a funhouse mirror that hates you. This is the island rule. On small islands, big animals often shrink, and small animals often grow. Food is limited, predators change, and over thousands of years, evolution just slides the scale. Your deer become toy versions, your mice become monsters, and you're stuck in the middle trying to guess what's still dangerous. Pygmy mammoths. Take a full-sized mammoth or elephant, a walking tank that can weigh several tons, and trap a population on an island with fewer trees and less grass. Generation after generation, the largest bodies are a liability, so they shrink. Some island mammoths ended up roughly pony-sized, maybe 4 to 6 feet at the shoulder. Adorable, right? Like a hairy ancient pony with tusks. Now imagine that pony still weighs several hundred pounds and doesn't care about your fragile ribcage. A herd of these things thundering down a beach in the mist could still trample you flat before you even finished saying, "Aw, look at the baby." Just be thankful you didn't have to decide in real time if you should pet it or run for your life. Then the island rule flips the script. Rats. The little scavengers raiding your kitchen today are bad enough. On some islands, their extinct cousins bulked up towards small dog size. Big bodies let them handle tougher food, bully other animals off carcasses, and shrug off minor injuries. You wouldn't want to come across a pack of those bold, dog-sized rodents in a cramped cave with no easy exit. Bold rats mean bold behavior. They'd raid nests, harass weakened prey, and squeeze into shelters where early visitors might be sleeping. In close quarters, teeth that size can shred skin, and any disease they carried would spread fast through a tiny island community. One bite isn't as deadly as a saber-tooth to the throat, but in a world without antibiotics, a rat-delivered infection could absolutely finish you. Picture it like a dream you'd wake up sweating from. Fog rolls over a rocky shore. Stunted trees twist in the wind. Out of the gray, a line of pygmy mammoths appears, tusks gleaming wet, trunks low, their footsteps soft but heavy. Between their legs, oversized rodents as big as terriers dart from root to rock, eyes shining, whiskers twitching, waiting for anything edible to fall. Luckily for us, this funhouse ecosystem is extinct, locked away in fossils and sediments instead of waiting on some island you accidentally book a vacation to. But if islands could warp mammals into tiny tank ponies and giant plague rats, what do you think they did to reptiles and birds? Oh boy, some of those scaled and feathered island experiments turned into sprinting, beaked nightmares and venomous surprises you'd never outrun. Mom, if you think sprinting beaked nightmares were bad, wait until the islands start growing dragons. You think it's scary to hike where there might be a snake or a coyote? Just be thankful you didn't book a little beach getaway in the Pleistocene. Komodo's ancestors. Today's Komodo dragon is already one of the largest venomous land animals on Earth. A 10-foot, 150-plus pound reptile that can drop a water buffalo with one nasty bite. But he's basically the budget version of some ancient monitors. On islands and nearby mainlands in Australia and Southeast Asia, there were giant relatives like Megalonia, stretching over 20 feet long, pushing 1,000 pounds. That's not a lizard, that's a stealth crocodile with legs. These things ruled their ecosystems. Big, low-slung bodies, thick tails for power, claws like meat hooks, and jaws lined with serrated teeth. Many scientists think, like modern Komodos, they had venom glands in the lower jaw that pumped in anticoagulants and toxins. So if the initial attack didn't finish you, the blood loss and shock would. Your poor ancestors, or anything unlucky enough to share their habitat, were basically walking snack dispensers. Picture it, a giant marsupial or an early human shuffling along a game trail. The air is hot, still. You feel alone. But in the scrub just off the path, a massive monitor has been shadowing every step, belly flat, tongue tasting your scent. He doesn't sprint right away. He waits. He stalks. Then, from what felt like an empty patch of bushes, the ground explodes. A blur of scales and muscle slams into you from the side, jaws clamping onto a leg or hip. One deep, tearing bite. Maybe two. Then he just lets you go. That's the worst part. He doesn't have to wrestle you to the ground like a lion. He can simply trail you at a walking pace while the venom and blood loss do the work. Hours later, when you collapse, he's right there, calm as a rock, to cash in on his investment. He was savage, but efficient. Modern Komodo dragons are like a living postcard from that extinct world. Same low, dangerous crawl. Same habit of ambushing goats, deer, even horses. Same possibly venomous, infection-boosting bite. Luckily for us, they're stuck on a few islands, not striding across continents like their oversized cousins once did. You wouldn't want to come across a 20-foot version at the edge of your campsite. And as if it couldn't get any worse than this, we've actually been playing on the easy difficulty setting. We've been hanging around recent islands and Ice Age leftovers. Pattern break time. Let's rewind way past Komodos, past mammoths, past everything you recognize, to when reptiles didn't just dominate a few islands. They owned the entire planet. Allosaurus. We've time-warped straight into the Jurassic, and you've just spawned in on nightmare difficulty. You think it's scary to run into a modern lion on safari? Try a forest full of 30-foot pack hunters with steak knife smiles. Allosaurus was the classic theropod killer before T-Rex ever showed up to the party. Not quite the largest, but still a serious problem. Up to 10 meters long, around 32 feet, a couple of tons of muscle on two legs, big skull, sharp, serrated teeth, and unlike T-Rex, he had arms that actually did something. Strong, clawed forelimbs that could hook, grab, and rake struggling prey, while that head did the real damage. You wouldn't want to come across just one. But the truly dangerous part? There's good evidence some of them didn't work alone. At places like the Cleveland Lloyd Quarry in Utah, paleontologists keep finding heaps of Allosaurus bones all jumbled together, plus the remains of giant plant eaters. That suggests at least group feeding, maybe even coordinated hunting. Picture a loose pack of these things shadowing a herd the way hyenas trail a wildebeest migration, waiting for something to slip, slow down, or get injured. Their hunting style wasn't a single knockout chomp like T-Rex. Allosaurus had a lighter skull built for speed, with a wide jaw gape and neck muscles that let him swing his head like a hatchet, slashing bites. In, out. Again, again. Death by 1,000 cuts. They'd rush in, slice open muscle and tendons, then back off while the victim bled and weakened. And they weren't going after small fry. These guys lived with walking apartment blocks, long-necked sauropods and tank-like stegosaurs. Imagine a circle of Allosaurus harassing a juvenile diplodocus, darting in to carve chunks out of its tail and flanks, or 2 or 3 working the sides of a stegosaurus, trying to stay just ahead of that swinging, spike-loaded tail. Your poor ancestors never had to watch their local lion pride test their luck against a living bulldozer. In that Jurassic ecosystem, Allosaurus filled the same role lions and hyenas do today. Not always a perfectly choreographed wolf pack, but opportunistic teamwork. One distracts, another flanks, a third goes for the hamstrings. As if it couldn't get any worse than this, every successful hit meant gallons of blood on the ground and a panicking herd stamping over anything that fell. Luckily for us, that whole system is long extinct. Because if medium-large pack hunters could bring down dinosaurs the size of buses, what happens when you meet the true giants? The solo monsters so massive that every step shook the ground like distant thunder, and they didn't need a pack at all. Tyrannosaurus Rex. You think it's scary to walk past a big dog at night? Try sharing a planet with this guy. T-Rex was the solo monster those pack hunters were afraid of. Up to 12 to 13 meters long, 40+ feet from nose to tail, and tipping the scales at around 9 tons. That's not one elephant. That's basically a small elephant herd stuffed into one extremely bad mood. Each skull was the size of a bathtub, packed with teeth thicker than your fingers and up to 12 inches long. And behind that smile, the strongest land bite we've ever measured, around 12,000 psi, strong enough to crush bone like stale breadsticks. And he didn't just hit hard, he found you first. T-Rex had huge, forward-facing eyes, giving him depth perception like a sniper scope. Those eyes were probably good enough to spot prey moving from over a kilometer away. Behind them, a brain wired for hunting, and an olfactory system so big it looked like someone had installed twin air intakes. His sense of smell was legendary, one of the best of any dinosaur we know. You couldn't just hide behind a tree and hope. He'd smell you, track you, and walk you down. People joke about the tiny arms, but those were attached to a body built like a living wrecking ball. He was savage, with a massive tail acting as a counterweight, letting him pivot fast for something that large. And he wasn't picky. Predator? Absolutely. Scavenger? Also, yes. T-Rex seems to have done both, happily. Those bone-crushing jaws let him bite straight through armor plates, turtle shells, even other tyrannosaurs. He could crack open skeletons to slurp out marrow and nutrients no other predator could reach, like a 9-ton hyena with a personal demolition crew. Now, slow everything down. Imagine a dense, late Cretaceous forest, humid, buzzing, leaves the size of umbrellas. A full-grown T-Rex walks through the trees, not running, just existing. Each footstep hits the ground and sends a low vibration through the soil, a distant drum you feel in your chest before you hear it. Small mammals vanish into burrows. Lizards freeze under ferns. Birds explode from the canopy in panicked flocks long before he even arrives. You don't see him at first. You feel the rhythm of those steps. Thump, thump, thump. Then a leg thicker than a telephone pole swings past your hiding spot, claws pressing deep prints into the mud. His tail brushes a tree and knocks loose a shower of leaves like confetti for your funeral. Just be thankful you didn't have to find out if he was hunting or just curious. T-Rex feels like the final boss of prehistoric danger, the largest, most famous land killer we've ever dug up. But as if it couldn't get any worse than this, size and sharp teeth aren't the whole story. The most lethal extinct animal might not be the biggest, or even the one you'd notice, until it was already too late. Deinonychus. You think it's scary staring down a T-Rex? Try something that doesn't just chase you. It outthinks you. Deinonychus was the mid-sized raptor you wouldn't want to come across in a dark Cretaceous forest. Not the largest killer ever, only about 10 feet long and maybe as heavy as a big man in armor, but built like a coiled spring. Each foot carried that famous sickle-shaped claw, a curved razor hook up to 5 inches long, held off the ground like a loaded weapon. That claw wasn't for decoration. Picture it latching onto prey, gripping like a meat hook, or slashing in quick, vicious kicks at soft belly and legs. And the rest of the body was just as deadly. Long tail for balance, flexible spine, feathers for maneuvering, and a skull packed with sharp, serrated teeth. He was savage, but not just in a brute force way, because Deinonychus had something a lot of extinct monsters didn't. Brain power. Its brain was relatively large for its size, with big areas for vision and coordination. Add in that bendy, cat-like body, and you get an animal that could twist, leap, and adjust mid-air. Now imagine that agility plugged into an actual hunting plan. Not just run and bite, but feint, circle, probe, retreat. And here's where your poor ancestors' nightmares really start. What if they hunted in packs? We've found Deinonychus fossils around the bones of big herbivores like Tenontosaurus, suggesting multiple raptors hanging around a single carcass. Were they cooperating? Arguing? Both? Just be thankful you didn't have to stand there and find out. Picture this: a bulky, plant-eating dinosaur, several times heavier than any single raptor, limping through a forest clearing. From the front, one Deinonychus darts in, jumps, and slashes at its face, then springs away before a stomp can land. From the side, another one lunges at the legs, that sickle claw raking tendons. A third hangs back, waiting for the perfect angle while the victim spins and panics. They don't need one crushing bite. They just need time. Attack, retreat, circle, repeat. Death by 1,000 cuts, literally. Every leap opens a new wound. Every pass steals a little more blood, strength, and balance. You think it's scary facing a single giant predator? A coordinated pack of smaller killers might actually be worse because they can be everywhere at once. Luckily for us, the raptor pack problem is something we only have to imagine in the dark while we're trying to sleep. Because as if it couldn't get any worse than this, not every dangerous extinct animal even bothered to chase. Some of the strangest and deadliest didn't sprint after prey at all. They waited, or floated, and let the world come to them. Ambush artists. You think it's scary to walk through the woods today and worry about a snake or a spider? Just be thankful you didn't have to deal with the prehistoric pros at hiding. Some of the most dangerous extinct killers weren't the largest or the fastest. They were the ones you never even saw. Trapdoor spiders. These little nightmares turned the ground itself into a weapon. They dug vertical burrows, lined them with silk, and then built a perfectly camouflaged lid out of soil, leaves, and webbing. To you, it would just look like normal forest floor. Underneath, a coiled spring of legs and fangs, waiting. They'd sit motionless for hours, sometimes days, 1 foot on a silk tripwire. A beetle walks by, a cricket hops. The vibrations twitch that line, and the door explodes open. In a fraction of a second, the spider yanks its prey underground, the lid snaps shut, and the forest looks calm again. As if it couldn't get any worse than this, some species probably ringed their doors with multiple trip lines, like a tiny horror movie security system. You think it's scary to reach into a dark hole for your keys? Imagine your poor ancestors living in a world where every innocent patch of dirt could be a trapdoor. You wouldn't want to come across that barefoot. And the land of hidden horrors didn't stop with spiders. Giant scorpions. Earlier in Earth's history, when oxygen levels were higher, some scorpions grew to lengths that would make you backflip out of your shoes. We're talking forms over 2 feet long, armored like tanks, with pincers big enough to grab struggling prey and a tail tipped with a wicked stinger. These weren't politely minding their business in a shoe closet. They prowled coastal shallows and swampy forests, snagging large insects, early amphibians, and any small vertebrate unlucky enough to blunder past. He was savage in close quarters, using those claws to hold victims still while the venom did its work. Luckily for us, the largest of these vicious arthropods are long extinct, because you really don't want check under rock for scorpion the size of a house cat on your daily to-do list. Picture this as you're drifting off. You're walking through a dim, humid Paleozoic forest. The air is thick. Every step squishes. A root brushes your ankle and you jump, Because down here, the ground isn't just ground. At any moment, a circular flap of soil might flip open under your foot, or a glossy shadow might uncoil from under a log and scuttle across your path. From tiny ambushers to giant hunters, we've now seen almost every way life can become deadly. So who wins? Which extinct animal stands above them all as the most lethal of all time? Stay with us, because the final reveal is coming. So who's the final boss of lethality? The ultimate extinct nightmare? You think it's scary to bump into a T-Rex in the dark, but our winner isn't a dinosaur or a shark, or even some mutant terror bird. It's us, or rather, the collective force of early humans and our close relatives. Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, Denisovans, your poor ancestors with stone tools and big plans. Individually, they weren't that impressive. No claws, no armor. If you dropped a lone human in a ring with a saber-toothed tiger, he was savage, but only in the screaming while being eaten sense. Yet as a group, they became the most dangerous animal Earth has ever seen. Every other predator on this list had limits. A megalodon could only kill what swam into range during its lifetime. A Spinosaurus could only chase what its legs and lungs could handle. Even the largest, most vicious hunter ran on muscle and teeth. Humans hacked the system. We added stone blades, spears, slings, and eventually bows. Suddenly, the slow, soft primate could drop a mammoth from a distance and walk away without a scratch. Just be thankful you didn't live in the Ice Age with us arriving in your habitat. When early humans reached new continents, the fossil record shows a pattern. Megafauna party, then megafauna crash. Giant ground sloths, glyptodons the size of cars, pony-sized pygmy mammoths on islands, that giant beaver that couldn't even build dams. One by one, they vanish soon after we show up. You wouldn't want to come across a hungry Arctodus, but Arctodus really didn't want to come across a coordinated hunting party with fire. Fire was the real cheat code. We burned forests to flush out prey, reshaped grasslands, and cleared competition. Then came agriculture. Now we weren't just hunting animals, we were replacing entire ecosystems with fields, herds, and villages. A single human might kill a few dozen large animals in a lifetime. A human culture with tools, fire, and farms could trigger extinction cascades that wipe out thousands of species over centuries. One predator's stomach versus an entire species' habitat? No contest. You think it's scary to imagine a mosasaurus lurking under your boat. As if it couldn't get any worse than this, our species made whole food webs go extinct without ever seeing most of the victims. Insects that depended on lost forests, scavengers that needed megafauna carcasses. Even that car-sized glyptodon may have ended up as both dinner and portable shelter. Oh boy. So if we are the most lethal extinct animal maker in Earth's history, what does that mean for the animals alive right now? And what kind of story will future species tell when they dig up our bones and our plastic and try to explain the brief, deadly reign of us? So after all that, teeth, claws, and planet-wide hit lists, you're still here. You think it's scary to picture a T-Rex sprinting at your bed, or Megalodon circling your tiny apartment like it's a snack-sized reef? Just be thankful you didn't have to actually tiptoe to the river for water while Arctodus was out there deciding which of your poor ancestors looked tastiest. Take a slow breath in for 4, and out for 4, because those armored tanks and terror birds, those buzzsaw jaws and saber-toothed cats, they're all gone. Every vicious one of them. Extinct. Filed away in rock and dust. Right now, they exist as bones in museum drawers, fossils in quiet cliffs, and stories we can safely unwrap while you're lying under blankets instead of bone clubs. Picture that glyptodon again, car-sized armadillo tank rolling across the plains. Now, in your mind, shrink the sound. The heavy footsteps fade. The shell that once had to resist deadly blows is just a smooth, cool dome sitting in a gallery, labels whispering instead of predators roaring. Luckily for us, the only thing it can crush now is a bored afternoon. Same with the terror bird. Titanus, 2.5 meters tall, beak like a guillotine. You wouldn't want to come across him on a morning jog. But here, in the dark, in your room, you can let that sharp beak blur at the edges. Imagine his outline softening, colors washing out, until he's just a shadow on the back of your eyelids. One more slow breath in and out, and the stomp of his feet drifts into the same background hum as distant traffic. It's strange, right? Hearing about the largest, most dangerous animals to ever live, and somehow feeling safer. Compared to saber teeth and buzzsaw sharks, your world is mostly pillows, mattresses, and maybe a slightly judgmental house cat. The deadliest thing in your room is a phone at 3 a.m., not a 50-foot reptile deciding your prey. Let your shoulders drop, jaw unclench. Imagine all those dangerous edges rounding off. Spinosaurus's sail folds into a gentle wave. Giganotosaurus's teeth turn to smooth pebbles. Even Megalodon's 40,000 psi bite becomes just a quiet curve of fossilized enamel in a glass case, while you breathe in and out at your own slow pace. And as if it couldn't get any worse than this, here's the twist. We barely scratched the surface. There were horned gophers, giant beavers that couldn't build dams, island mammoths the size of ponies, and sharks that hunted like slow-motion vacuum cleaners. Whole catalogs of strange, extinct neighbors we didn't even have time to visit tonight. They'll be waiting, patiently, in the rocks and in the next episode. For now, you can let the past sink back into the dark, and let the only thing hunting you be sleep, creeping in on soft, harmless paws. So, before we let it all fade, let's drift back through the strangest shadows we met tonight. You think it's scary to walk through the woods now, with nothing bigger than a bear? Picture a car-sized armadillo instead, a glyptodon, its shell like a stone igloo. Early humans could crawl inside those empty domes and huddle against the wind, whole families tucked into the armor of something long dead. Then there was the beaver that broke the rules. A giant, bear-sized beaver, heavy and slow, that couldn't even build dams. No tidy lodges, no neat ponds, just thick teeth, big paws, and a life spent swimming through Ice Age rivers like a misplaced piece of furniture. Above them, birds that took large and broke the dial. Great, extinct giants whose eggs were bigger than your head, smooth stone ovals resting in sand. Imagine cupping your hands around just a corner of one shell, feeling the weight of a breakfast that could feed a village. Spiral-toothed sharks cruised deeper water, jaws curled like a nightmare saw blade, each tooth a step on a staircase that only went down. You wouldn't want to come across that grin in the dark, but here, in memory, it just circles slowly, more strange than dangerous. On land, a 1-ton rodent with sword teeth, Joseph Ortegasia, nibbling at branches, using those massive incisors like tusks. Just be thankful you didn't have to explain to your neighbors that the world's largest rat just walked through their garden. He was savage-looking, but in your mind now, he only breathes and blinks. Above the forests, eagles big enough to hunt animals taller than a person, dropping out of the sky onto giant moa. A flash of wings, a thud, and then stillness. Now, that whole deadly dance is frozen, like a painting you can hang at the back of your thoughts. Your poor ancestors painted cave lions by firelight, their hands tracing vicious jaws on stone. Outside, mammoths and ground sloths moved through falling snow, and on little islands, everything grew the wrong size. Tiny mammoths like shaggy ponies, giant rats, dwarf elephants, as if it couldn't get any worse than this for anyone trying to stay on top of the food chain. Let all of that soften. Let glyptodon shells become quiet rooms. Let the spiral teeth unwind into harmless spirals of foam. Now, pick one extinct animal. Just one. See it lying down somewhere safe. The giant beaver in a reed bed, the terror bird folded into its own feathers, the shark resting in dark water. Its age of danger is over. Luckily for us, all it can do now is sleep in your imagination, a calm, distant echo rocking you toward your own rest. And as we leave it there, breathing slowly in the dark, you can feel the whole strange planet exhale with you. So while the planet is exhaling with you, let's do one tiny thing before you drift all the way off. In that soft space between awake and asleep, I want you to pick a favorite monster. Which extinct animal in this whole strange parade surprised you the most? Was it the terror bird, sprinting around like a head-butting ostrich from a nightmare? Or that giant beaver that couldn't even be bothered to build a dam? If your eyes are still open, whisper it into the comments for future you. Tell us which creature changed the way you picture prehistory, and why. Did the car-sized glyptodon with its living tank shell make you imagine your poor ancestors hiding inside it like a portable studio apartment? Did the slow-motion vacuum cleaner shark make today's great whites feel almost polite by comparison? You think it's scary to swim with modern sharks? Just be thankful you didn't have that thing hoovering the oceans. We read those stories, quietly, late. And in future sleep science episodes, we might let your favorites rise back up for one last yawn. Maybe your comment will be the reason a pony-sized mammoth pads softly across a snowy soundscape, or a giant ground sloth ambles through a whispered bedtime story, claws and all. If you ever wanted to co-write a lullaby with the Ice Age, this is your chance. If you like sinking into these long, calm journeys through dangerous, extinct worlds, this is the perfect moment to press subscribe. Very gently, like you're not trying to wake the herd. Tap the bell so the next time we wander through ancient forests or dive with the largest predators that ever lived, your device will nudge you with a new bedtime story. Luckily for us, the only thing stalking you will be a notification. If you're still wide awake, you can let the playlist or autoplay carry you to the next strange ecosystem, as if it couldn't get any worse than this. And then it does, in a fun way. Another world, another wave of vicious teeth and claws, safely trapped behind glass and pixels. And if your blinks are getting slower, you don't have to move at all. Just let the screen dim, let the voices blur, and let the animals keep watch while you slide under. Every roar you heard tonight is just a memory. Every bite is locked in stone. The monsters are gone. The megalodon, the raptors, the towering bears. Every deadly shadow your ancestors ever feared. They're all fossils and footnotes now. You wouldn't want to come across them in real life, but here, they're only stories. Out there, it's just your room, your breathing, your pillows and blankets. Nothing hunting you, nothing tracking you as prey. Only soft fabric, a safe bed, and a very quiet planet waiting for you to fall asleep. So let's start walking away from them. In your mind, turn around. The age of monsters is behind you now, stretched out like a dark, dangerous zoo of things you wouldn't want to come across in a midnight hallway. You think it's scary to walk outside at night today? Back there, night walked on two legs and hunted you. Take a slow step forward. then another. As you move, time runs in reverse. Those giant terror birds that once sprinted like feathery sprinters across ancient grasslands start to shrink. Their hooked beaks soften. Their heavy footsteps get lighter, until they're just distant silhouettes on the horizon, pacing in slow motion, then freezing like museum models. Farther back, the woolly mammoths that used to march under auroras begin to fade. Their shaggy fur turns to drifting mist, tusks glowing for a second, like pale moons before dissolving into the air. Herds that once shook the Ice Age ground become nothing but low clouds, sliding away over a quiet, snow-white field. Keep walking. Deep time keeps rewinding. Dinosaurs at the edge of your vision, those vicious theropods with jaws built for tearing prey, start to unravel into starlight. Spines, claws, teeth, all those deadly edges break apart into tiny glowing dust, floating upward into a dark sky until they're just constellations. Luckily for us, he was savage millions of years ago, not now. Listen to the soundscape as you go. The roars are still there at first, but they're way behind you, like a storm on the far side of a valley. Each step makes them softer. Roars turn into rumbles. Rumbles melt into a low, rolling thunder. Footsteps of giants become faint echoes, then little taps, then nothing at all. What's left? Your own breathing, the soft rustle of your sheets, maybe the tiny creak of your bed as you settle a bit deeper. Just be thankful you didn't have to fall asleep with a megalodon circling your coastline. Now picture a hallway, cool, dim, and lined with glass. Behind each pane, skeletons, shells, tusks, armor plates, all the extinct nightmares we just walked past in reverse. At the end of the hallway, there's a heavy museum door. You reach for the handle, feel the weight of it. Then, gently, you pull it closed. Hear the soft, deep thud as it seals. All those dangerous shapes stay locked away, safe on the other side of glass and time. Turn back to your body. Scan from your toes upward, as if you're brushing off every last fossil. Toes loosen. Calves soften. Knees release. Thighs sink into the mattress. Your poor ancestors had to stay ready to run. You don't. Let your stomach unclench, your chest get heavy, your shoulders drop. Jaw loose. Eyes soft. The age of monsters is done for the night. You can visit them again anytime you want, but right now, the only era that matters is this one, the age of sleep. Let it begin. So now, let all that go. The claws, the teeth, the deadly jaws, the vicious bites, every dangerous shadow we walked through together. They can all fade out like a movie ending. You think it's scary to imagine them still out there, hunting in the dark. Luckily for us, they're not. They're stories now. Fossils. Old echoes. Picture this instead. A coastline at the very end of the age of monsters. The last giant reptiles have slipped beneath the waves for the final time. No Arctidus, no Smilodon, no Megalodon cruising just offshore. The beach is empty, just wind combing through low ferns and grass that hasn't even learned to be afraid yet. The sky is pale, washed with the first light of dawn, and the only sound is distant surf breathing in and out. Out on that silent plain, where your poor ancestors would one day walk, nothing big is moving. No thunder of theropod feet, no stampede of prey trying to escape something larger, faster, stronger. Just a small bird testing its voice, a beetle drawing a line through the sand. The world, between nightmares. Every time one of those giants went extinct, space opened. Empty niches waiting to be filled. New shapes, new bodies, new ideas of what life could be. Weird little mammals creeping out of the undergrowth, taking over the night shift, then the day shift. then the whole planet. Step by tiny step, that quiet chain of survivors leads all the way to you, lying here now, in the dark, listening to stories about things that will never touch you. Just be thankful you didn't have to live through their prime. You only have to drift through their memory. So let the earth itself be the last character in this story. Imagine it breathing slowly beneath you. Oceans rising and falling like a sleeping giant's chest. Tides in, tides out. Glaciers come, glaciers go. Forests grow, burn, return. The planet has watched every monster you wouldn't want to come across appear, roar, and vanish. It will watch new ones too, and it will keep turning, completely calm, completely indifferent. Your thoughts can be just like those ancient clouds over that empty shore, forming, stretching, breaking apart. No need to grab any particular image, any fact, any name. Let the saber teeth blur. Let the giant sharks and bears and reptiles lose their outlines and sink back into the mist. Now imagine the sound of this room getting bigger, as if the walls fall away into open air, as if the camera is pulling back from that quiet beach, up through the clouds, up past the curve of the planet. City lights dim into embers. Oceans shrink to soft blue swirls. Then even Earth itself becomes a small, glowing marble, floating in a black, star-filled ocean. The voice you're hearing steps back with it. Quieter, further. Just a faint sense of space, and you, alone with the slow turning of the world, safe in the dark. Let the monsters go. Let the planet breathe. You can sleep now,